from a family of 5.
Oh, wow.
And all of us, I think, experienced tremendous freedom and support. In fact, we used to argue a lot with our parents. Furiously at the dinner table, it used to be so noisy. All of us would have dinner together every evening, and we would be arguing and fighting about things. Actually, I thought that parenting practices would be very different across cultures. But when I actually went and spent time in other cultures outside of India, I felt that there's a lot more similarity than we imagined.
Oh, wow.
The adults of the community recognize the will of the child very, very early in the child's life.
Oh, wow.
So the amount of independence that children in that tribal community experienced is, I think, unique.
Okay.
They said that I was leaving a sublime pursuit of physics and going into a ridiculous pursuit of education. I think it was great that I grew up without exams until grade 7 because then you could just focus on learning and you didn't have to think about passing an exam. So you enjoyed learning for its own sake. They had no clue what we were doing through the day. As long as we came back at the end of the evening, they didn't mind. So we would be roaming around on the hills, going for long walks, just telling them we're going, sometimes not even telling them, and just taking ourselves off and coming back. I think somehow kids sense it.
Yeah.
When a conversation becomes a lesson, they can just tell.
We just start fidgeting or like seeing here and there.
Yes, enough. I won't say it's negative or positive because I don't think it's about things getting bad. I mean, these are changes for many reasons, for economic reasons, the nature, the cost of living, space, all these things are bringing about changes. Actually, many years ago, I had a conversation with a colleague of mine, Professor Talib from Jamia. And he told me that in his home, he is the mother.
Oh, wow.
And that really made me think that mother is not a gender, it's a particular relationship.
Right.
For example, children from lower socio-economic groups are far more knowledgeable about politics. And they know how things get done.
Yeah.
They know much more about land. They know much more about property, inheritance, conflict. Much more. Because that is really what the environment offers them. And they're very aware of it. No.
Okay.
I tell my mother also, I'm growing old without growing up. She won't let me grow up. Problem of Indian society, it's a fact of Indian society. Isn't it such a relief that no matter how old we are, we know we can go back and live with our parents?
Yeah.
Isn't
so
it?
true.
It's actually a great source of support.
Yeah.
It should not be, it's not a burden that you have to stand on your own feet or something. So I think it's fine that we have this. Before he married, he had 5 theories of parenting and no children. And now he has 5 children and no theories of parenting.
That's really interesting.
Today, we are pleased to have as our host Venkatesh Arora, a student from the Center for Climate Change and Sustainability Studies at the School of Habitat Studies, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. Venkatesh is a passionate advocate for climate action and sustainability. He currently serves as a Marshall, core team member of the Swapna Foundation, and is the founder of The Conscious Humans, a platform dedicated to raising awareness about climate change and sustainable living. With over 4 years of experience, Venkatesh has been working tirelessly to bridge the gap between climate awareness and grassroots action. Joining us today as our esteemed guest is Professor Padma M. Sarangapani. It is a distinct honor to have her with us. Professor Sarangapani is a distinguished scholar and the chairperson of the Center of Excellence in Teacher Education at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. She holds an MSc from IITC, an MPhil, and a PhD from Delhi, and her work has significantly shaped the field of education. Her research interests are vast and encompass indigenous knowledge systems, teacher education, and the integration of ICTs in education. Professor Sarangapani's contributions have earned her numerous accolades, including the UNESCO King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa Prize for the use of ICTs in education and the OER Award for Excellence in Collaboration. Beyond her academic accomplishments, Professor Sarangapani has played an influential role in national and international committees, helping to shape educational policies and standards. She has served on various bodies, including the NCTE, the NIAS Council, and the Teacher Education Think Tank. Please join me in welcoming Professor Padma M. Sarangapani, a true leader and visionary in the field of education.
Okay. Should we start?
Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
okay. So, a very warm welcome to the podcast, ma'am. And setting the stage for today's podcast, we're going to be talking about parenting and how it has shaped over the years historically and what the modern parenting practices, and along with that, how parents of today can navigate the challenges of parenting their children in a good way. Because coming from a lower middle or middle class family, I would say that for the major part of my life, I have been parented by both my parents. There was a time when I was parented by my mother for almost 1.5 to 2 years. But that was a time that I really believe that the way a child is parented really shapes the way of a personality that a person gains. So I would like to know more about you, since you've done such huge amount of work in the education and development sector. You've also worked with UNESCO, NCERT, and you've also worked with the State of the Education Report. So specifically talking about what was the way you were parented, and how did it shape your personality, and how are you managing your life right now with all the huge amount of responsibilities you have? So yeah.
I think my parents always didn't dictate what we should do. I'm actually from a family of 5.
Oh, wow.
And all of us, I think, experienced tremendous freedom and support and appreciation of what we were doing, and support when we struggled with things. So it was very, I think, a very positive and optimistic environment in which I grew up.
Okay.
I think it's a privilege. I'm grateful for it.
Okay. Wow. So you were, who was the person who influenced you the most in your childhood days? You looked up to?
In fact, I don't think we looked up to anybody in that sense. It was very friendly, the atmosphere. It was never an authoritarian atmosphere. So I don't think we ever thought we had to look up to anybody. In fact, we used to argue a lot with our parents. Furiously at the dinner table. It used to be so noisy. All of us would have dinner together every evening, and we would be arguing and fighting about things. So yeah, it was very different.
Very interesting. So what do you think shapes the current parenting practices in India today? Is there any beliefs or tradition attached with, particularly about the Indian parenting practices, and how they are different from Western or other practices that are followed around the world?
Actually, I thought that parenting practices would be very different across cultures. But when I actually went and spent time in other cultures outside of India, I felt that there's a lot more similarity than we imagine.
Oh, wow.
I think that everywhere parents are nurturing, or that seems to be the main attitude of adults towards children, and trying to bind children into a circle of affection and love and positivity. I think that's there in all cultures. I don't think it's very unique to Indian culture. But I should say that when I worked among the Baiga tribe in Chhattisgarh, I did come across something very distinctive about parenting there.
Okay, wow.
Which has made me think, I think about it almost every day. I think there, the adults of the community recognize the will of the child very, very early in the child's life.
Oh, wow.
So the amount of independence that children in that tribal community experienced is, I think, unique.
Okay.
In fact, parents would never do anything that the child didn't want to do, even if the child was 3 or 2 or even 1. So it's that extent of free will of the child. I think all of us as parents, and definitely as Indian parents, we let go of the child's will very, very slowly. Maybe never. Isn't it? I think that way I experienced something different. Of course, I also encountered control of will in some ways, I think. Like when I decided I want to stop studying physics and start doing education.
Okay.
My parents didn't prevent me, but I could experience their concern about my decision for at least 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I had to argue back why I was doing the right thing.
So it must be a constant throw of tane at you at some way or the other.
Actually, my parents never taunted me on this decision.
okay.
I experienced that from other people. They said that I was leaving a sublime pursuit of physics and going into a ridiculous pursuit of education. So I've heard things like that from others. Not from my parents, but they were very concerned. They wanted to know that I was making the decision for the right reasons, that I was confident, I won't regret it later. So I think concern that makes you think and be more confident about the decision you're making. That I think.
Yeah, right. I think concern is very important, and what you told that they were very supportive in that aspect. Was there a particular aspiration attached with your parents, something they wanted you to become?
No, but I think they, like many parents do, offer you the possibility of aspiring for things. So I think that's mainly what they provided. They also sent us to schools which were very, very open and free, and where we did not experience peer pressure.
Okay.
Yeah. They were, in fact, they made a very bold decision in that when I was growing up, they sent us to a school which didn't have exams till class 7. So we didn't experience pressure of examinations, and they were just fine with it.
Do you think that exams as a pressure are important, or do you think that they should be included in education after a particular amount of time?
I think after a point of time it's all right to have them, but when I think it was great that I grew up without exams until grade 7 because then you could just focus on learning and you didn't have to think about passing an exam. So you enjoyed learning for its own sake. And then exams came along and you realized that they were part of life. So they were never deciding who you are.
Okay.
But there were things that you had to do in order to get on with things.
Yeah.
So that I think gives a different view on exams.
Yeah. Interesting. So how do you think that are the parenting practices that were practiced in your time, are they still being practiced in the Indian families, modern Indian families, or is there a difference or change of
I think
perspectives?
definitely change.
Yeah.
When I grew up, we were growing up outside the eye of our parents. Of course, we were lucky we had a large house, but and at the edge of the city, and we spent all our time outside. We were hardly in the house under our parents' noses. They had no clue what we were doing through the day. As long as we came back at the end of the evening, they didn't mind. So we would be roaming around on the hills, going for long walks, just telling them we're going, sometimes not even telling them, and just taking ourselves off and coming back. So I think that way we grow up. We are not brought up. But I think these days parents are very involved in children's lives.
Yeah.
Maybe even too much.
Yeah.
And I think it's changed, right? The way we live has changed. The architecture of our growing up has changed. We're now in apartments. We can't just step out. Safety is a concern now.
Yeah.
And we are under the noses of our parents, under their eyes, and they're too much involved in our lives.
I think COVID was one of the time when we really got in close contact with our parents, and it was like constant every day.
I think it was a good experience for the boys because girls generally experience it all the time, isn't it?
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah. But I think that dynamic has changed a lot compared to when I was growing up.
Yeah. I think do you think that in case of daughters it's more involved rather than in case of sons?
When I look back, I think my parents never consciously treated the girls different from the boys. And out of the family of 5, we have 3 sisters and 2 brothers. I don't think they were conscious of it, but I think many cultural norms did influence some of the things that they did.
Okay.
Which we fought back as girls. I think those kinds of cultural norms continue even today. I feel that today parents are much more confident that and have been influenced by ideas of equality more today. But I think still there are concerns that women must be able to get married. Women must have children. And, they must defer to the wishes of the in-laws family. I think those ideas still circulate in some ways.
Right.
It's not only parents, but even families into which girls get married have those kinds of expectations. So I think it's changing, definitely. So they're okay when girls go out to work and girls express that interest and wish. But I think it's still there in the society.
And how do you do you have children?
Yes, I have one son.
Okay, one son. So how do you think that, especially in the case of as you were a daughter, so whenever you used to go out alone to work or for that fact play anywhere or meet somebody else, as a parent, how do you explain yourself and how do you ensure the safety of a child? And are there any things that you tell your child while growing up to take care when he or she steps out of the home, who to interact to, and how do you think that plays a role?
We haven't had too many explicit conversations about those things, but I hope, we have traveled together as a family. We've been to many places, so hopefully those experiences shape and contribute to your awareness of the world outside. But I also realize that everybody picks up that kind of awareness in different ways. Sometimes maybe things have to be told. They won't just be picked up. So I think there is space for more of that. But I also know when we try to instruct, it's a pushback. Don't want to hear those things.
Yeah.
Shut your ears. I think somehow kids sense it.
Yeah.
When a conversation becomes a lesson, they can just tell.
We just start fidgeting or seeing here and there.
Yes, enough.
That really happens. And do you think that that parents play a huge role in understanding and supporting the child's learning process and schooling?
They can.
Yeah.
They can play a huge role one way or the other. I mean, it's definitely. And I think one thing has changed in India, the way we think about parents and family. I think in earlier times, the family was far more fluid and extended. And many more people in our lives. So the work of parenting would be done by many people, not just biological parents or those who are named as parents on a birth certificate. Parenting was a shared thing. Even older siblings are parenting, aunts, grandparents are all in the business of parenting. I think that has changed now more, isn't it? We kind of restricted to this.
Yeah, I still remember whenever I go to my nani's house or dadi's house, there are people coming and they then say ki itte chote the tum when you were there, and that explains a lot about the point you made. That and now it has really shifted, because earlier we used to have, I think, joint and nuclear families. But now it has transitioned to families becoming much smaller, and people getting married tend to stay either on a different floor in their house from their parents, or they shift to a different place. Do you think that is also
I won't say it's negative or positive, because I don't think it's about things getting bad. I mean, these are changes for many reasons, for economic reasons, the nature, the cost of living, space, all these things are bringing about changes. But I think many of the work of parenting, which is either opening up horizons to you or censuring you when you're not doing the right thing, giving you advice, preventing you, this is often a shared thing. Many people feel the right to interfere in your life or talk to you about things, right? But now it's a little bit more bounded,
right?
And people don't feel they should. It's their children. I don't think that feeling was as strong earlier, maybe because many more people were in your life. And you were growing up with many more people. I think it also creates more burden on parents, because they become directly responsible for many more things. So that's also tough. Because some of these conversations you don't know how to have with your children. But in the past, other people had those conversations. It didn't always come to the mother or the father.
Do you think that mothers play a larger role than fathers in parenting?
Actually, many years ago, I had a conversation with a colleague of mine, Professor Taleb from Jamia. And he told me that in his home, he is the mother.
Oh, wow.
And that really made me think that mother is not a gender, it's a particular relationship.
Right.
And he felt that in his home, he was playing that role of the kinds of things that we associate with mothers. So I think, there are different roles and different needs that have to be addressed. Yeah, we don't have to map it onto the person called mother, person called father. It can be
Really
more fluid.
interesting. Is there also like differences in the type of parenting or the level of parenting depending on the income of the family, like lower middle class or middle class, higher income class families?
There are differences, definitely. And I feel these are differences for different reasons. One is that if, depending on where you are in the socio-economic hierarchy, you have more access to resources,
Right.
not only economic resources, but also cultural resources, information. And then you bring them into play in the life of your children, right? So when you are from certain economic, social backgrounds, your knowledge and experience of the world is relatively limited in some ways, but also very deep in other ways. For example, children from lower socio-economic groups are far more knowledgeable about politics. And they know how things get done.
Yeah.
They know much more about land. They know much more about property, inheritance, conflict. Much more. Because that is really what the environment offers them. And they're very aware of it. Children from upper middle socio-economic groups, maybe they have access to the powerful languages like English or the right Hindi to speak. Maybe they have access to that. Maybe they know more about opportunities. Where can I go? What are the possibilities? And that again is kind of getting channelized in through parents and the social group in which you work, right? So
Okay.
I think so. In fact, I was quite struck by this insight. In fact, Simantini Duru gave it to me. She said that she was doing this course with students, exposing them to social life and values. And she said that certain conversations around property, inheritance, all these issues, children from the government schools were able to latch onto it.
Oh, wow.
And they were so knowledgeable about why things happen the way they do. Compared to children from upper middle class who were like totally blank, had no clue what she was talking about. I think we don't recognize the kind of resources that become available in different groups.
I also think that it's necessary for parents to, even from different classes of society, to expose their children to particular situations where they get accustomed to how real life works or what are the hardships of life, or because it's become more pampered type of parenting.
It's
what do you
true,
think about
yeah.
that?
I think children are becoming precious in a way, isn't it? It's like, so you just want to... Also, this thing called childhood was not so marked in earlier generations. I think now we are much more conscious about child and catering to child, making it into some kind of a specialized object. And, this whole market that has grown around children.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of middle classes buy into that whole, that world. And it becomes aspirational
Yeah.
for
it
many
does.
people. Yeah. So I think, I'm sorry, I've lost track of what you asked.
It's okay. It's completely fine. We'll move on to the next question. So, the thing that I asked you earlier, that do parents play a role in understanding the way a child is schooled? So, do you think that how should parents navigate whether they should homeschool their child or they should put their child into daycare or they should go for a regular school? As a parent, how do you decide that?
I think many considerations are playing into people's choices, isn't it, about these things?
Income does play a role, and
Obviously.
Yeah.
We are one of those societies which has privatized education much more than any other societies in the world. Isn't it? Yeah. And if you can afford it, then you look at particular kinds of education, schools. Many parents are conscious that the friends you make in school become a resource for you when you grow up. So they're the right friends to have later in life.
Yeah.
So you build a social network right from school. So that sometimes guides choices. Sometimes people are very frustrated with schools that seem to just be, gearing you for a competitive, exam-oriented culture. So they favor that. Many parents who have children who have different needs and who are not quote-unquote normal in a very narrow sense, they are also immensely frustrated with the lack of sensitivity in mainstream schools, the inability to accommodate difference, making children feel that difference is actually a deficiency and that you're not normal. I think these are very terrible experience for any child to have, right? So I think many parents are also anxious and frustrated when schools can't support holistic growth of children. And that's something I feel we are much more confident as a society to appreciate today compared to earlier. We are more confident that holistic growth is important.
Right.
And today you will find many more parents interested in the physical education curriculum, the music curriculum of school compared to earlier, where many parents were anxious that you should be able to secure a job through whatever, competitive exams and the standard subjects.
Yeah.
I think that is changing.
Were like engineering and medical the two most preferred options in your time as well?
Somehow, because of the school I went to, I guess it wasn't.
Yeah.
We didn't hear so much talk about it. Yeah. I don't think fortunately I didn't grow up with that. And when I look back, I think that because I was a girl, probably I experienced more freedom.
Okay.
Because I feel that many young boys feel the pressure of having to earn an income from very young. They feel they have to get productive jobs. And girls don't have that pressure.
Right.
Actually. So I think in retrospect, probably I benefited from that.
Okay. You also mentioned about following different, like there might be a child who's not very good at academics. He might be good at some cultural aspects or sports activities. So as a parent, how do you support and identify your child's weaknesses and strengths?
I think parents are very sensitive and are very aware. Parents are especially aware of potential of children. And so when they feel a school is not catering to it, they pitch in or they are conscious of it. You will find that very often parents and mostly mothers tend to do it. They often give up their careers to be able to address difference.
Right.
Yeah. That I think parents are very sensitive and aware of that. Potential of children. But I've also seen that of parents from very low socio-economic groups like working class, when they find that their child in school is not able to cope and is not showing signs that they're getting on with academics, they actually become worried because they say if he's not learning in school, then he's going to pick up the habit of laziness. And he or she's going to pick up the habit of being okay with lack of success. Will forget how to work hard. And so they often want to pull the kid out of school and put them into work, where they will pick up the habits of struggle and perseverance. They feel if they let this child experience failure in school again and again, then the child will actually not be equipped with survival skills when they become adults. And that I felt was a really powerful insight I gained talking to parents once. So this decision to pull the child out of school was not ignorance. It was actually coming from a parental insight of what is actually good for my child. And I think parents are therefore able to think much more holistically and far. They're really thinking of how is this child going to be as an adult. But I mean, in school are we thinking like that? No, we're not often so far-sighted, isn't it?
Right.
Parents feel the responsibility and they know they have to prepare children for that, the long race.
For the long race, right.
So they have to make children much more resilient and be able to endure that.
How do you think that, especially for children who are interested in sports and culture, how do parents navigate these challenges?
See, unfortunately, schools don't offer enough of it. Some schools do, but many schools don't, isn't it? They just tend to emphasize scholastic classroom-based learning.
Right.
These are much more complex to organize. When parents can afford it, they get these services from hobby classes and stuff like that. Right? But it becomes a leisure pursuit. It would be good if most schools offered a lot more of that.
Yeah, really. And is there also a particular aspect attached with parents' perception about the marks his child gets? And because it's always constantly like if you're not getting good marks as compared to your peers, or if there's somebody in your neighborhood who's getting better marks than you, then your parents come at you and then they say कि उनके लड़के को देखो उनके ज़्यादा marks आए हैं, why are you not scoring that good in these subjects? So how, as a parent, how do you navigate that?
I've never experienced it, and I don't think I've ever spoken of this with my son either or others. Yeah.
So it's like you're completely supportive of the marks he gets, and you do not...
No, I definitely do speak to him about how he can do better, the need to study, the value of practice. Absolutely.
Does he come up to you and share particular aspects of his life that he is weak in something or he wants your help?
No.
Okay.
And I do feel like telling him that this should be a good sign that you need my help for this or that. I hope somewhere the message will click.
But why do you think that's happening? Is there a reason behind it, or is it like do you ask him, or do you ask him and he's not responsive enough, or is that the case?
I do, but I think we also have to accept that kids are different and people's personalities are different, right? So everybody is not equally talkative about these things. So you have to, I think, as parents also accept your children will be different from you.
Yeah.
And there's no reason why they should be like you.
Does it not irritate you sometimes when he does not share things and you get frustrated?
So what? So then you say that you should tell me more. But it's not you should tell me because that kid is telling you. It's just
Right. So you cope up with the hardships that come with not telling you stuff.
Sure. I think that's part of parenting, and that's what makes it interesting.
I think trust is what matters the most.
Yeah, that's something you don't want to lose, right?
Yeah.
You want your kid to know that even when things get tough, you can come and talk about it.
Yeah.
I think that is one thing you want to keep.
Should parents also talk about failure and them not meeting their expectations, their children?
Expectations of parents?
Yeah.
We have expectations, I suppose. Maybe we can. But I don't know whether that can be a basis for... I mean, you can have expectations if you feel somebody has potential and they can reach that potential, and therefore your expectation is you will reach your potential. Not that I have some expectation and you have to struggle to reach that. I think it's really important for us to help children realize potential and realize that you can reach it.
Right.
And I feel that some of us figure out the value of perseverance and push, but sometimes it has to be supported as well from others around you. It could be teachers, it could be parents, it could be older siblings. Sometimes I feel things you want to say are better said when an older cousin says it and it's not you.
Yeah.
Or an uncle says it and it's not you. I feel that kind of deflecting of some of these things happens. And I feel all children need to experience self-confidence.
Right.
Isn't it? So you have to somehow create conditions for that. But like Dewey says, things don't happen by instruction. You have to create a context and an ethos and enable people to experience it.
Right. So, how over the period of years, how have you created some conditions that really built confidence in your child?
So you can answer this after a break. Your native language? Tamil.
Okay. So you know some part of Hindi?
Yes, I've struggled and learned Hindi. I think I learned Hindi when I lived in Delhi.
Okay.
However, abhi jaise look self-knowledge.
Which was the last question we asked? I forgot.
Even I forgot.
Everybody
Drop
forgot.
it.
Start with new question.
It's okay, we'll start with a new question. ठीक है. It's on roll?
Yeah, it's wrong.
Okay. So, मैम जब हम लोग पर्टिकुलरली मोबाइल फोन्स एंड टेक्नोलॉजी की बात करते हैं तो बहुत बड़ा इन्फ्लक्स आ गया है. लाइक एवरीबडी इज कॉन्स्टेंटली ऑन देयर फोन्स, आइदर इट्स फॉर एंटरटेनमेंट पर्पस और एजुकेशनल पर्पसेस, एंड देयर आर लॉट ऑफ ई-लर्निंग रिसोर्सेज ऑल्सो अवेलेबल ऑनलाइन. So, how do you, as a parent, how do you perceive the role of technology in your child's life?
I think the entry of technology into everybody's life is inevitable. It's just happening at a level which is quite extensive, isn't it, in different forms, especially the mobile phone, but also gaming and stuff. Yeah. It's completely a new culture. I haven't experienced this growing up, and I'm not fully involved with what's going on in that world. But I do wish there were ways in which that was kept more in control. Sometimes, I mean, for a long time, I have myself been explicit about how much, when to stop, when to put away, and rules about those things. And I think as parents, we probably need to be a little aware of it and control it. Maybe much more of our didactic presence in children's lives. It is a matter of concern, I think. Yeah, definitely.
Well, do you monitor your child's activity, or should parents monitor their child's activities?
I think absolutely. I think especially with the mobile phone is concerned, because it takes you down paths and exposes you to things that you would not have in your own, community.
Right.
Course of living in a community you would not have experienced. So I think we need to be a little bit more aware and alert. And I think as a society we need to understand much more what it means for children to be having access to information and communication on this scale, which is not geographically bounded.
Right.
We do need to. I don't have answers, but I do feel that there is a need to control. And I think a lot of core behaviors, psychological behaviors, ability to pay attention, what you will listen to, peer relations, I think those are getting affected very deeply.
Right.
Isn't it? So I think we need much more awareness in parenting on these things.
Because children, I think, when they get invested in technology too much, they tend to get very aloof from their peers, and they get very introverted.
And also very much more dependent on a world which is not in your immediate neighborhood. See, normal social interactions, we can influence each other because we are communicating through many modes, and we have opportunities to come back. But in this medium, all those interactions which we have evolved with have changed. Isn't it, the nature of interaction? And our identity is now dependent on people who are not in our environment. Very often, our self-confidence. We're not in control of the people who influence our self-confidence anymore. These are people outside our immediate physical sphere of influence. I think that really changes things. And then the world also becomes invisible to parents. Parents in this wide sense that I was speaking about earlier.
Right.
It's an invisible world. So I think
even with AI, I think that has happened a lot.
AI has in fact introduced yet another rather alarming dimension, isn't it? Even before we have understood this world, we now have this artificial intelligence in it, mimicking human interaction, but without human intention.
Because it's something that AI ऐसी चीज़ है कि आप उससे कुछ भी पूछो उसको आंसर पता होता है. तो is it possible कि कुछ ऐसे बच्चे हों which look up to AI for their answers rather than going to their parents, and how as a parent how do you navigate that?
ये अलग अलग सोर्सेस से जवाब मिलना मुझे लगता है कि वो एस्पेक्ट एक्चुअली गुड, एक अच्छी चीज़ है कि कई सवाल होते हैं जो हम पेरेंट्स से पूछने से भी हिचकते हैं. तो यदि हमें वो इन ऐसे सवालों का जवाब मिल रहा है तो अच्छी बात है. पर ऐसे भी सवाल हो सकते हैं जिनके आंसर्स डेंजरस हैं. तो उसका कैसे, what are the checks and balances? I feel this is not a parent responsibility. As a society we have to be responsible. Right? It's not just my children. I should be concerned about other people's children. Those of us who are involved with shaping the technology, making it available. We have to be aware of its wider impact on humanity.
I think a lot of balances also comes with parents knowing about the technology जो आ रही है नई and how do they function and how do they play out. So if they know the potential of the technology, they are better able to navigate their child to control the exposure they have to the technology.
But it's becoming much more demanding, isn't it?
Yeah.
When parents are faced with so many things of having to ensure families sustained economically and so many decisions and things to be worried about. Not sure if you have your job, so many things, right? So we're just adding more things to think about, worry about.
Yeah. Interesting. Also, is it like important for parents to discuss these aspects with their school teachers, the problems that their child is facing? If, for instance, I think most of the schools do not allow digital devices in the premises, but if they do and their children are using that and their teacher brings up that particular aspect that your child's education is being affected, as a parent, how do you control that without invading their privacy?
I feel that in the business of parenting, in this wide sense of, I think schools and teachers are equally responsible, right? I mean, the purpose of education is to develop you into a human being and as a person. So it's not like it's the parent's job and this is the school's job. I think it has to be a collaborative endeavor. And schools need to see it like that. I think as schoolings also, the old-fashioned schoolings, there was this notion of a normal child, especially with the private schools, right? And this is the purpose of school. So it's always very circumscribed and you don't want trouble. You don't want more work. You just want to cut them out. You can't deal with this, go to another school. I mean, that's hardly the way in which you address questions of education, right?
Right.
I think you have to accept the responsibility that comes with it and work, create conditions for more collaborative
approach.
And it is completely normal for children to be drawn into these things. Your child is not abnormal if he or she is getting drawn to devices, if he or she is watching content which is adult. It's perfectly normal to have curiosity, to do these things. So I feel treating it in a punitive way makes it, then it all goes undercover, right? You don't feel you can talk about. I think that we have to be far more, accepting of what children do, why they do, and respond with much more understanding that this is human behavior, and that doesn't make it right. But then it's not like a problem, that you have to fix the child. Or the parent did something wrong, that's why the child is doing this. If it becomes a blame game, then I think nobody's going to change. It's just going to go undercover.
It's more about collaborative approach and understanding each other.
And understanding and respect. And we have to figure it out. Nobody has a fixed answers, frankly, to half of these things. We just keep trying to do things and figuring it out.
Also, a lot of mental health and emotional issues also arise with these excessive use of technology. And we were talking earlier about the competitive examination preparation, that it brings a lot of stress into a child's life. So as a parent, how do you help your child to navigate that? And do you sit and talk with them, or is there some way you can deal with that?
With mental health issues, I feel children have to be willing to talk, and you have to somehow constantly signal that you're there to listen.
Right.
But also make it normal to have mental health issues. You don't become abnormal because you have mental health issues. Everybody has them. So it's perfectly normal to have it. And also sometimes the parent is not the right person to speak to. Maybe then you need to speak to somebody else, and children should feel confident that they can seek help from the right person.
Yeah.
I think we really have to normalize health, wellness seeking behavior. And I think as a society in India, we're just probably starting on that journey.
Yeah.
We've usually pathologized any mental health issue. And it becomes very a stigma. It becomes stigmatized.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
And then it becomes private.
Yeah.
And it becomes isolating. And those are just not the right solutions.
I think as a child also, कई बार ऐसा होता है कि children think that if they come out with a particular emotional issue they're facing or something is bothering them a lot. In that fact, children go to a lot of relationships, they have breakups and then they get involved with people. So at certain times we think that if we share that, ki we'll be seen as weak.
Right.
So do you think that's true, and how do you help your child in that aspect?
Absolutely. It happens, I think.
Yeah.
That happens. There's a lot of bullying that happens in school as well. And peers can be great, but they can also be very cruel.
Right.
So I think we have to be available and observing our children and be able to have conversations. So we pick up indications of, distress.
Okay.
And then ask. I think we have to do that. It's more difficult when children don't come out and speak on their own, and then you have to make an effort to draw them out. I think, it's a lot more of that also, I feel. Maybe we are aware of it more these days as parents. Maybe in earlier times, parents were less aware of it. But I think these are also part of what we discussed earlier, right? That the structure of the family is changing.
Right.
The possibilities of the friend circles and the kind of people with whom you interact, all that is undergoing change quite a bit.
Right. It does, yeah. So we also talked earlier about the way parenting is done for different incomes of families. So do you think that how the financially disadvantaged parents can support their child's education effectively, even if they do not have access to financial resources? How do they ensure that कि उनके बच्चे को वो education मिल रही है?
तो एक यदि घर पे कंडीशंस बनाया जा सकता है ताकि बच्चा अपना काम कर ले और पेरेंट्स की तरफ से एक इंटरेस्ट हो बच्चों की प्रोग्रेस में, शायद वो भी काफ़ी है. उससे ज़्यादा करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है घर पे. पर एक और चीज़ है जो इंडियन स्कूल्स में एक एक्चुअली बड़ा प्रॉब्लम बनता जा रहा है, वो है कि स्कूल्स अभी बहुत ही स्ट्रेटिफाइड हो गए हैं कि एक ही सोशल क्लास और इनकम ग्रुप के बच्चे एक साथ पढ़ते हैं.
Right.
और अब फ्रेंड्स मिक्स्ड नहीं है. पहले ज़माने में हो सकता था कि आप एक ड्राइवर के बच्चे हो और आप ही के क्लास में एक और फ्रेंड है जो स्कूल टीचर का बच्चा है या बिजनेसमैन का बच्चा है, साथ पढ़ रहे हैं स्कूल में. ये गवर्नमेंट स्कूल में होता था, कॉन्वेंट स्कूल्स में होता था. बहुत कम स्कूल थे जो इतने एलीट थे कि एक ही किस्म के बच्चे साथ पढ़ रहे हैं. वो और डाइवर्स था. पर आजकल ये नहीं मिलता है. तो जो पीयर ग्रुप के डाइवर्सिटी से जो रिसोर्सेज शेयर हो जाते हैं स्कूल में, वो अभी बच्चों के लिए वो एक रिसोर्स नहीं बना. तो ये भी एक प्रॉब्लम है मेरे ख्याल में. सिर्फ पेरेंट्स का रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी नहीं है, पर स्कूल भी डाइवर्स रख कर सभी बच्चों को और एक्सपीरियंसेस दे सकता है. और ये एक्चुअली बहुत ही पावरफुल वे में एक अमेरिकन स्टडी था कोलमैन का, बहुत डिबेट हो रहा था कि यदि एजुकेशन इक्वल है हर जगह तो क्यों नहीं ब्लैक बच्चे अलग से पढ़ें और वाइट बच्चे अच्छी से अलग से पढ़ें, क्योंकि दोनों स्कूल में स्टैंडर्ड एक ही है। तो अच्छा एजुकेशन इनको भी मिल रहा है, उनको भी मिल रहा है, अलग अलग मिल रहा है, उसमें क्या प्रॉब्लम है। तो उन्होंने स्टडी के थ्रू एस्टैब्लिश किया कि जिन स्कूलों में बच्चे साथ में पढ़ रहे थे वहाँ पे लर्निंग आउटकम्स बहुत बेहतर थे। बाकायदा ये अलग अलग पढ़ने का। और फिर उनका ध्यान इस पे आया कि पेयर ग्रुप के भी इफेक्ट्स होते हैं। जब साथ पढ़ते हैं तो पेयर ग्रुप के भी इंटरेक्शंस होते हैं, जिसके थ्रू सबका बेनिफिट होता है। तो आई थिंक दिस इज लाइक स्ट्रॉन्ग पॉलिसी एविडेंस, राइट, दैट मिक्स्ड education benefits all children. We don't only have to look at parents.
Okay. So it's more about those, if a child is from a economically disadvantaged family, he tries to mix up with people from other sections of the family.
Usually we see this, right? Yeah. They are benefiting from that. But the other children are also benefiting from this.
Right.
I think diversity is, a good dose of diversity is good for everybody. It's not only that the poor need the diversity, even the rich and the better off children also need the diversity. There's another concept which is also very important, which is that parents and others, it's not just parents actually, it's a community responsibility. You need background,
right,
but you also need foreground. You need support, but you also need aspiration. Aspiration pulls you, support pushes you forward.
Right.
So what gives us the ability to aspire? What gives us the confidence that even if this takes 10 years, I can give 10 years for it? So I have aspiration, which takes me forward. I think this we have to provide to children. It can be provided by parents, it can be provided by school, it can be provided by community, from many sources.
I think also a part of growing up is having a lot of aspirations. Like in early years, I for myself wanted to be a pilot, and then slowly it transitioned to me coming to intermediate studies, and my interest changed. Then I suddenly wanted to be a table tennis player, and then eventually when I went to college, my interest changed again. So then I wanted to be in the defense services, but I had color blindness. So over the period of time when you have aspirations and then they tend to break down, as a parent, how do you navigate and help your child in telling them that yes, it's a path and you...
I mean, isn't it amazing that you can have these different aspirations and that you can keep hoping for something else? I think that's it's a privilege to be able to aspire. And to be able to shift your aspiration. But that's the other thing. I feel there are so many possible things that we can do, isn't it? It's not just one thing. I think that is something which we should be much more open to. Much more flexible about these pathways. And I think parents can play a role in that. Sometimes children, it's part of the psychology of an adolescent that you get fixated on one idea. And I think as parents, we do need to open up other, even as teachers, I feel, don't just get fixated on one goal. There are many things. And if you have many interests, good for you. You have many possibilities that you can pursue.
Interesting. Also, like, we were talking some days back, and one of my friends was telling that they have so much huge pressure, academic pressure, they have so many things to do, but their parents are like, उनको हर रोज जानना है कि what is happening in their life, क्या चल रहा है, and sometimes he said कि it gets very choking for them to tell their parents every day and telling them कि आज ये मैंने ये किया, ये खाया, ये बनाया. So how do you, what do you think?
I think that is a problem of Indian parents, and I think we don't let children grow up. Isn't it? We don't recognize them as adults now. Willing to, we're not fully yet. I think it's a problem of Indian society more broadly. I think. In fact, it's not just parents, right? Even in many families, it's only one adult, oldest male who is kind of the parent. Everybody else is a kid. I tell my mother also, I'm growing old without growing up. Because they won't let me grow up.
But why do you think that happens a lot? Is there any context behind it? Your parents being very attached? Is it like the way Indian society functions?
I think it's part of Indian society. I don't think it's a bad thing. But we also have to push back.
Yeah.
And make space.
Yeah. I think balance is important.
But I think that's okay. It's not like also. Part of it is also part of the game. It's fine.
Yeah. I think it happens a lot also because since we've lived for the initial 18-20 years with our parents, and then we go on to different cities to pursue our bachelor's and master's. So there is that aspect attached to it that our parents get, especially mothers and their sons, they're like...
that's a very Indian thing. But I think it's also I don't think it's a problem of Indian society, it's a fact of Indian society. Isn't it such a relief that no matter how old we are, we know we can go back and live with our parents?
Yeah.
Isn't
so
it?
True.
It's actually a great source of support.
Yeah.
It should not be, it's not a burden that you have to stand on your own feet or something. So I think it's fine that we have this aspect in our society. In some societies, it will be regarded as a big stigma. You're an adult male and you're still living with your mother. People say, oh, I'm doing it only because I can't afford my own house. But isn't there also an affectionate bond which keeps parents and children together?
Yeah.
So I think these are aspects of our culture which are so valuable and give us a different way of growing up.
Really does, yeah. But how can, as a parent, how do you push your child? Because a lot of time what happens is our aspirations are based on different peer pressures. Somebody is doing, like my friends are doing engineering, so I also want to do engineering because unka saath chhoot jayega. And I have lived in the school with them for years and bahut achhi banti hai unse. But then children have that aspect in their minds कि वो engineering कर रहे हैं मम्मी तो मेरे को भी करना है. So how do you make sure as a parent and encourage your child to explore different career paths, because there's a lot of uncertainty involved with different career paths now?
Yeah, I think that's also a part of, I think that's partly why I find that many more parents today are interested in and investing in a more holistic growth of their children. And I think that there is far greater openness today, isn't it, of different career pathways. So probably parents have a role in it. But I do think there's a lot of role that career counseling and those kinds of things also play. Much more awareness of what is the possibility in that path. I think parents also sometimes narrow their choices because they themselves don't know what is possible.
Right.
And they're not confident that they will succeed.
Yeah.
It's so much dependent on the resources that you have, isn't it? And the social circle that you are able to access. So actually there is a problem if we keep bringing this back to parenting. I feel in fact schools and education have a huge responsibility in these aspects. This was an insight of a sociologist that one of the functions of school is to devolve social and cultural capital. Okay. And the teachers play an important role in devolving social and cultural capital, which means that things that we assume would happen in home, schools have a huge responsibility. And teachers mediate between cultures. They can give children access to cultures that are not a part of their home. If we keep coming back to parenting, then we're really thinking of the home culture as being the key source of life success. I feel home culture is a key source for identity formation. But your life success should not be limited to that. Neither determined primarily by that. There's a much bigger role that schools have. And so I think we really have to think of schools as contributing to person formation in a fundamental way. It's not complementing what the home does. It's constituting along with home. But that's different, and this is, I think, a huge change for Indian society as well. Normally we thought that children grow up at home and they go to school for education. But basically they become who they are through the home. So we have family, jat, caste, all those things own the identity. School, we just go to school to get some stuff. But I think in modern society, it's a much more collaborative effort between home and school, through which we become people.
What we are.
It should be like that.
Right.
But if we continue to privatize education, it won't become like that. You have to see education as a public good in this broad sense.
Okay. Also, do you think that we were talking about that collaborative approach? So, do you think that the relationship a teacher at a school shares with the parent, is it important to ensure the child's overall development?
Absolutely. And I also think that teachers are not parents. There's a different role for teachers and a different role that parents play. And so they do need to interact with each other, but each one is contributing something different. It's a different kind of relationship with different kinds of possibilities and freedoms.
Also, is it okay for our children to look up to their teachers as parents? How do you think that plays out?
Not parents, but the confidence that these people have my well-being they have my interests. They will take care of me. So the sense that this is a nurturing environment, I feel, is common between the two. But I think sooner or later the expectations and the nature of the relationship changes. And I feel when children interact with teachers, they begin to encounter the idea that there are people in the world who can have my interests at heart, but who need not be from my family.
Yeah,
so a sense that I can expect it. So the sense of the public, I think you first experience in the person of a teacher.
Right.
And then you get a sense that you grow into a space which is not the space of the family. It's important for us to experience the public space outside of family. Otherwise, we keep mapping family relations onto all relationships of life.
Yeah.
In fact, this is a tendency we have in India, right? We go into the public space and everybody is becoming a mama, it's becoming an auntie, becoming a dada.
Yeah.
So we're kind of mapping home relationships into public life. But we should be able to
differentiate between
as well.
Right.
And our affections in the public space need not be because they come from family. Maybe the family provides us a model. But we should be able to respect each other without making people into family.
Also, do you think that since a lot of women are looked up to parenting their child more than the father, do you think that has changed over the period of time since women are now more in leading positions and they are taking up jobs and careers?
Yes, but I think also this women responsibility for parenting was much more a middle class thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's generally true. I think many people parent in other socio-economic groups. It's a very middle class norm that you share the burden. I mean, in earlier times, women and men both worked. And women and men both parented their kids. Right? I mean, the woman is as much in the agricultural labor work as the man is. So it's only in the middle class when work goes out of the home that you separate the home from work. And home becomes the domain of the woman and work becomes the domain of the man. I think it's an artificial and more modern middle class
approach.
Approach also.
Okay. Also, there are some families, some couples that hire help for seeing their child at home. Do you think that also plays a role in shaping the child? Because in the initial years...
It's the adult too.
Yeah.
Like in earlier times, there wasn't employed help. Sometimes there are also employed help at home. But this business that adults have an authority over the child is a broadly shared thing.
Okay.
Right? Adults will play that role, absolutely, of being nurturant. I think reducing these relationships into this mother-father-kid business is a very modern, limited, middle-class idea.
Okay.
We can widen our view of that. We should.
So ensuring that your friends, your peers, your teachers, your coaches play a role in your overall development rather than just...
You must have heard this quote, right? It takes a village to bring up a child.
Yeah.
What does it mean? This whole wide community is actually involved and the kid needs access to that. You're not going to become an adult just by interacting with the people called parents. You need to have this wider... And why a village? Because a village is interested in the kid. These are not like strangers.
Right.
It's a community who knows you and is interested in your growth.
Right.
Shaping it.
Don't you think that with the growing competition, there's a lot of hatred and jealousy that comes out of people when you look at that approach from that angle.
Yeah, there is absolutely, I suppose, envy, especially in a society which kind of attaches so much to merit and success disproportionately, and then you're nothing if you don't do it. Right? It makes you experience lack of dignity if you fail. That kind of polarizing society, I think, affects it. It is so easy to love success, isn't it?
Right, it is.
But how do you value a person who experiences failure?
Right.
How do you make the person feel that you're not worthless? I think that's much more difficult.
I think social media also plays a very influencing role on people today because everybody is posting their success stories online.
Absolutely, it's like an obsession with it, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's completely an obsession.
Yeah. So what do you think? What are the top 3 things you would like to suggest modern parents to look
Forward to parenting their child.
No top 3 things. Maybe I should end with this. So there was some English lord, I don't know, it's just a fictitious story, I guess. He said that before he married, he had 5 theories of parenting and no children. And now he has 5 children and no theories of parenting.
That's really interesting.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. I hope you had a good time. Thank you so much, ma'am.